Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. Today, 2020 Fantasy Football Rankings Update, news and notes, because there's been a lot of news since the last time I actually did a news update 2 days ago. That's how you know it's actually football season, by the way. When I update my I wake up early, I update my rankings, and literally 30 seconds after I submit them, news changes, and I have to go update them again. That's the mark of a good football season. So I'm going to be continuing to update my rankings. They're up on dkplaybook.com right now, but you can find them in the description of this video and podcast over the weekend, because this is draft weekend. This is when most people are doing their drafts, so I want to make sure that stuff is updated. Before we get into all of the news and the updated rankings, remember to smash the like button to the video, and you tell me your favorite pick, the one guy that you need to have on your fantasy football team this year in the comment section. And don't be afraid to rate, review, and subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast. That's a 5-star review, by the way. None of these 3 stars. You can give your head a shake with the 3 stars. Get out of here with your 3 stars. 5 stars is the rating we want for the audio podcast, specifically on Apple Podcasts. But I do have some announcements. So if you don't give a shit about my announcements, go to the time codes. You can jump to the player names. Easy stuff. But you might want to hear this because it's big news, especially for me. Probably less to do with you guys, but it could be a nice opportunity for people out there to get ahead, especially in the betting and DraftKings game. So I released on Twitter yesterday that I will be continuing my partnership with DraftKings, just like I have for the past 3 years. I'm going to be doing it for years into the future as well. That is something we finally came to a conclusion on. My show is going to be running on the Mayo Media Network, but the rankings, the golf article, that will still be up on dkplaybook.com in the future. That's where you're going to be able to find everything. Plus, I'll have exclusive video up on the DraftKings YouTube channel for golf and for football. I'll be handling their PGA Tour relationship as it pertains to multimedia and video. Might be doing some live events when live events are still allowed to be a thing again, and just show up on the scene there. So I'm super excited to be back with DraftKings. I've had a blast working with everyone over there. The one thing that I'll say, I know DraftKings gets shit on all the time, just by people out there, and I don't like this and I don't like that. To work in conjunction with them, I'm not an employee, I'm a contractor, I'm a partner with them, but they basically said, Pat, we're hiring you. We want to sponsor your show. Go do your show. No meddling whatsoever. And there are very few places, especially in content creation, where people just throw you the keys and be like, go on your way, do your thing. This is why we wanted to partner with you. We're not going to tell you what to do. You do you, and just promote DraftKings. That's what I'm doing. Play on DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook, too, while we're at it. So that is awesome, and that's the kind of working relationship that I want to have going forward. There's going to be more shows, especially DraftKings Showdown shows, not featuring me, popping up on Mayo Media Network with legitimate experts. Very soon, I will be continuing my partnership with FantasyNational.com for all of the golf, but I wanted something like that for football and for baseball and for basketball, hell, even MMA. Are there tools out there? Because listen, I'm not going to put my picks behind a paywall. My picks are shitty. Everyone knows that. They're fun picks. They're not terrible, but they're not like pay for it great. Put it that way. And I want to be in front of paywalls all the time. I want my content to be free. So when it comes to something like Fantasy National, I think the tools are worth paying for. I paid for them until I became a partner with them. Then they give them to me for free. It's fantastic. But at the same time, they're helpful. They enhance just how much you enjoy, how much you can win, how much research you can do. It enhances the product. And I've been searching for years for an NFL equivalent to that. And I finally found it. So I am announcing right now on the show, and you'll probably see it on social media very soon, I've joined the board of directors at FTN Network. So FTN Daily, FTN Fantasy, FTN Bets. I'm going to be pairing up with Brad Evans and Jeff Radcliffe, 2 of my oldest friends in the industry, some of my biggest confidants. Brad is like the best dude of all time. When it comes to, he was at Yahoo for years. Now he's doing FTN. Jeff was at Pro Football Focus. He's doing FTN. These are like legit guys. And this roster of like writers, paywalled writers, free writers, every single sport, it's going to give me access to those people to bring them onto the Pat Mayo Experience to give you guys great DraftKings information throughout the season. But it's these tools that are fucking fantastic. I'm not lying about it. One of the biggest problems, especially in football, when you're trying to use splits tools or pace tools or optimizers or projections, is that you need a PhD to figure this shit out. And I don't have a PhD. I'm kind of an idiot. The biggest selling point to me with Fantasy National when I was working with Mike on it was this is easy to use. You can use this for 2 minutes and understand how it works. Now, you can go deeper than that the more you understand the product, but it's not overwhelming to use. And that is what's going on with these tools at ftndaily.com, ftnbets.com. Use promo code Mayo. Get yourself an initial discount. We want to push everyone to it. It's fantastic. I'm actually doing a show on Saturday. You can watch it anytime throughout the week. I took 2 of their DFS DraftKings professionals, took them out from behind their paywall. These are the guys that do the projections, that kind of thing. And they're talking about tournament selection, how to actually sustain winning on DraftKings over time. What are reasonable expectations? And we show you how to use the tools. That'll be on the Pat Mayo Experience on Saturday. So I highly recommend tuning into that. But these tools are awesome, and it took me like 2 minutes to figure out how to use them. It's easily customizable, and that's just from the daily side at ftndaily.com. From ftnbets.com, there are parlay calculators. You can site shop in terms of finding the best odds that you want to have. It's incredible stuff. It's one-stop shopping, and that's all anyone really wants. Where's the one place that I can go to do all my research, to figure out my picks, to make the right pickup moves? It has all the information, all the color that you want, and it has these tools that if you want to do your own research and figure everything out, customizable too, that you can do that. And like I said, working with the gang over there has been kind of incredible. Kevin and Elliot developed these tools, and they're awesome. Brad and Jeff, I guess the announcement I should put out, Sunday morning, live, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on the Mayo Media Network. The Pat Mayo Experience Sunday morning show will be me and Brad Evans for this year. So that's going to be an awesome show, and maybe even a bigger announcement to me personally, because one of the big features was he was on the show when he announced that he was actually going to ftnfantasy.com. Chris Meany, who's on the line right now, you're going to be a part of the Monday show. I got you and Garion for a Monday morning recap show. This is going to be fucking awesome.
Man, this is going to be absolutely fantastic, buddy. I'm so thrilled for you. I couldn't be more prouder of you and what you've been able to accomplish over the past few years, and getting me into this the fantasy circle. And I'm just thrilled that you're joining FTN. There's, you just talked about it off the top. There's a lot to really get excited about if you're just unaware. So thrilled to have you on. The tools are phenomenal. It's just the beginning, as you said. There's lots to look forward to. I just love how it's so customizable. It's so easy to use. Everything is all in one spot. So a lot to look forward to. And really the show on Monday, with me, you, and Gary, and turning the clock back a little bit, old school buddies, it's going to be a blast, man. Yeah,
it's going to be fantastic. So if you're looking for content for me, so all of my regular content, like I said, up on dkplaybook.com, all the regular places that you would find everything. The podcast isn't moving, the show isn't moving, everything's still free. I'm going to be doing 2 articles a week for FTN Daily. And maybe listen, sometimes I'm in a bad mood and I don't want to write, but sometimes I'm in a good mood and everything will just kind of flow out. And I'll end up writing like 3,000 words. It'll probably end up there on ftnbets.com, breaking down golf and breaking down football, specifically DraftKings pivot plays for the week for both football and for PGA, NFL and PGA. And I will be doing what is tentatively scheduled as a Friday night. The show is actually going to be behind a paywall. It's not my picks, but it's going to be me and a couple of the DraftKings pros that they have for NFL, and me basically just peppering these guys with questions. I believe there's a viewer chat as well. So again, code Mayo at ftndaily.com. Get you access to all this. It gets you a discount. So I hope to see everyone there. I couldn't be more excited. And no one's a bigger shill than me. So you're going to be hearing about this stuff over and over. Just like you hear about fantasynational.com for golf /Mayo for 20% off. By the way, US Open coming up. You want to get it on that. And for football, code Mayo at ftndaily.com. But enough shilling for me. That was the announcement. I'm super excited. Especially with the expansion of Mayo Media Network, being back with DraftKings, FTN, Fantasy National. It's fucking super exciting times, but like I mentioned, Beanie, football's actually here, and the real work begins now.
Yeah, it's all happening, man. I'm just so pumped. Like last night when we were talking, I just had the biggest smile on my face. I was just super excited for this show and for this announcement. This is the best FTN get to date. So yeah, I mean, football is here. It's super weird. It's obviously a weird time to be a sports fan if you're covering all the sports like we are over at FTN, with absolutely everything from WNBA, League of Legends, golf, of course, the Big Four. in hockey, basketball, baseball, and
Hockey is
football
not
right
a part
around
of the
the
Big
corner.
Four, pal.
Come on, you know I was going to say that.
P-
It's
P-
part of the Big Four. Let's go.
No, if we're talking about like betting and daily fantasy, PGA is a part of that Big Four, not hockey.
Yeah, PGA is really taking the jump up. I'll give you that. PGA, I would put them, probably ahead of baseball. Basketball is obviously still pretty big. We're selling some subs and DFS and NBA betting and stuff like that. But my hockey picks, I'm 17 games above 500, flirting around 17 units for anybody who wants to make a little bit of cash in hockey. There's some money to be made there too. But you're right. I mean, golf. If we're really being honest here, and we're talking about say a big three, golf is in there.
Yeah, well, I mean, the big thing is no matter what you end up betting on, and I'm going to have an NFL betting show coming out early next week as well with a professional NFL gambler about the things to do and the things not to do. I mean, basically, I'm just going to start writing columns like, here's how you lose betting, here's how you lose at DraftKings. I'm just going to write down what I do. And people can just do the opposite of that and probably end up winning in terms of like, oh yeah, I'm on a treadmill at the gym like 10 minutes before lock. I'm going to fill out like 9 more lineups just randomly. Don't do that. That's how you lose. Trust me on that one. But let's talk about the football. I told you like I woke up, I updated my rankings. I wanted to do that every day going into actual draft weekend and throughout the week. I'll have Celia on for week 1 rankings very soon as well because week 1 is here. Jeff and Cust will be on the Spread Pick show too. And then we'll set an actual schedule for the week and I'll let you know when everything is coming out. But Adrian Peterson got cut this morning after I ended up updating my ranking, so I had to go back through and figure everything out. So Adrian Peterson is out in Washington. The Washington Footballs no longer have Adrian Peterson, which is funny because this is how stupid NFL news is at this time of year. Because I did an entire list of like what's the news that we should cover. We could rapid fire through this, give our hot takes or quick picks, and you can always find the rankings, which are now adjusted properly, up on DKPlaybook.com. The link is in the description of this video and podcast. If you just want the quick link, go to it. The quote yesterday from theathletic.com, your former employer, Meanie, they said they expect Adrian Peterson to get the early down work in Washington's backfield. That was from like 8 p.m. last night. This morning, Peterson cut. That leaves Antonio Gibson, Bryce Brother Love, J.D. McKissick is back there. And don't forget that Peyton Barber is on this roster. Now, everyone knows that Peyton Barber is not good. That never prevents Peyton Barber from getting 27 carries in a game. So everyone's going to draft Antonio Gibson. Everyone wants to stash Bryce Love. Oh, and in PPR leagues, J.D. McKissick could be a real steal. Don't forget, this offense is probably not very good, so I don't think you want to like reach for any of these running backs. But at the same time, like, would it shock you if Peyton Barber had 27 carries a game for 59 yards for all 16 games? They're like, this is our guy, he's a grinder.
No, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, we saw it last year too, with Tampa Bay and him and Ronald Jones. So I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, Peyton Barber obviously is not going to be on my radar. I don't want any shares of him. You have to be playing in like a 24 person dynasty league, the deepest league of all time, just to have Peyton Barber on your bench. And, I was kind of interested in AP and just the fact that, over the past couple of years, he's averaged 1,000 yards on the ground. He is what he is at this point of his career. He's just getting volume and touches. It's not spectacular, but now he's off that roster and it's easy to look at Antonio Gibson and see the upside. But, Pat, I just look at, last year in college, I mean, he had 33 rushing attempts, 33. It's not to say that he can't come into the NFL and get maybe 100 more, have 130, but 33 rushing attempts and 1 game with double-digit carries. It was his final game. I believe he had 11. And after that, it was 6. So he is a gadget player. They can move him around all over the field. He is the guy that I have maybe the most interest in, but I'm not going to be reaching on him. I've waited as long as I can to do most of my drafts that I care about over these next couple of days. I have him as an RB30 right now, actually right at 30 in a full point PPR setting. I don't know if I'll get him. Like, I won't be drafting him as a top 25 running back. Like, I will not be taking him over Kareem Hunt or Cam Akers or maybe even DeAndre Swift. Like, I just won't be doing it. So, as you said before we got into this backfield, it's not a very good football team. It's probably the second worst team in all of football behind Jacksonville. They're not going to have a great offense. I don't imagine Antonio Gibson is going to be the goal line back there. It probably will be Peyton Barber, and that's what will tick off owners, is that Barber will get in there. He'll steal some touches inside the goal line, inside the red line. Maybe he is the guy that gets, on average, 8 to 10 carries a game. What does that leave Antonio Gibson? 3-4 carries, a few catches out of the backfield. Like I said, they can move him around, but I think maybe the value is in Bryce Love because people are going to reach on Gibson And Bryce Love seems like more of a between the tackle runner. Like I would peg him for the second most touches out of this backfield. And then JD McKissic, you mentioned the Athletic. Last week they were talking about JD McKissic being the best back in this backfield and how explosive he's looked and how he's, just coming in with a purpose in training camp and catching balls out of the backfield and making things happen in the open field. So it's a crowded backfield that really I don't want a whole lot to do with. Antonio Gibson, I project him for about 130 carries, 40 catches. So roughly 200 touches, maybe 950 yards, but I don't think he's going to be the goal line back. And that's kind of what I want, a guy who's going to touch the ball in the red zone. This whole backfield right now is just looking like a pass for me.
Yeah, I only mentioned the Peyton Barber thing. You don't want to draft Peyton Barber. You probably don't want to draft anyone besides Gibson. I'm actually a bit more bullish on Gibson with this development because I look at Ron Rivera's there, whether he can last the entire season. If he has to go get treatment, then Jack Del Rio takes over, and that could be somewhat problematic. But just coming over from Carolina to see how they used McCaffrey, another guy who, listen, Gibson's not small. He's just not what you would call a traditional between the tackles runner. That I think it is worth gambling and reaching on Antonio Gibson, where he's going to go. Like, where is he going to go? 6th round now? 5th round, probably?
Yeah, probably. If, I got him right around RB30. That would be 6th round. Yeah, I mean, towards the end of the 5th, you're going to see guys like Cam Akers, Devin Singletary, Kareem Hunt come off the board. I'm not really sure how people feel about David Montgomery, who's going to be out for a couple of weeks. Obviously, Ronald Jones has really dropped out. He's not a 5th, 6th round pick anymore. J.K. Dobbins. So you're going to have that decision whether you want to go and reach for a guy like Antonio Gibson or you want more of a true 3-down back, in my opinion, in a Cam Akers or a DeAndre Swift or a J.K. Dobbins. I know how much you love Mark Ingram. Like, who would you rather have, Antonio Gibson or J.K. Dobbins?
Gibson, just because there's the other options there. The one appealing part about Antonio Gibson, and it's a leap of faith, obviously, but there is a path where he's the guy in this backfield. And I don't think that's going to be the case with Dobbins, just because that evil Mark Ingram is still lurking unless he gets hurt. And then they still have Gus Bus in order just to take away carries. Plus, Lamar is going to run a bunch. Like, I can see a path with Gibson where he is low-rent McCaffrey or he's low-rent Kamara with the way that his skill set plays. Like, he could be someone who ends up with like 8 catches a game. And then I don't care if he doesn't get the goal line work as long as he's just piling up these touches. Like, if you can make him, averaging 8 catches a game is not going to happen. But there's going to be those spike games because that's the type of player that he is. They're going to use him at receiver. They're going to use him out of the backfield. They're going to give him carries. Like, there's enough ways, and this team is going to be throwing. That's the other thing, too. Like you mentioned, they're not good. So the Peterson thing initially kind of worried me. Like, they're just going to run AP into the ground, and this guy's never going to see the field until they get way down, and then it's only catches that you're going to see from him. I'm sure that Bryce Love and Peyton Barber are going to get worked into the mix at some point, but like everyone who thinks that J.D. McKissic is going to be the pass-catching back here, it's going to be Gibson, or they might play on the field at the same time. Like, I think you can feasibly get him between 15 to 20 touches a game, and I think that makes him very valuable. So in my rankings, when I updated, I still like Jonathan Taylor more. I like Cam Akers more. I agree with that. I like Kareem Hunt more. I'm with you. But I have him in the tier of guys that everyone else has really highly ranked that I have way down on my list, and I think I'm going to be a bit higher on Gibson. So the next tier for me of running backs goes David Johnson, Melvin Gordon, 2 guys that just I'm not going to end up with. I do have them higher ranked, but like their ADPs are way above that. Then Antonio Gibson, then Mostert, Fournette, Devin Singletary, and Jordan Howard, James White, David Montgomery. That's the range that I have him in. And I probably, you know what, if a gun to my head and I was in a draft and I had the choice between Melvin Gordon and Antonio Gibson, I'd probably take Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, I would probably take Melvin Gordon there just because
he sucks.
Yeah, I know. I know that whole range is very interesting. Like David Johnson, Todd Gurley, Lev Bell, Melvin Gordon. Like which one of those?
I have Todd Gurley way above these guys. I think Todd Gurley is much safer than these guys.
Yeah, fair. Absolutely. I'm not going to really argue that. Out of all those guys, it's probably the one that I would count on to have a productive season. In years past. He's not far removed from a really good campaign. Even last year, I believe he had double-digit touchdowns and he caught a bunch of balls, not as much as we're used to seeing. So I would probably just lean Melvin Gordon there only because I know that Denver wants to run the football. Yeah, Phillip Lindsay is still on the roster. He's going to be the goal line back there. He's going to catch some balls. I think he's slightly safer, and that's weird to say that Melvin Gordon is slightly safer. But Yeah, you make a good point with Antonio Gibson because there's not a lot of pass catchers there. That's why we really love Terry McLaurin. Like, he's a phenomenal wide receiver. He proved last year that he can handle top coverage. They didn't have any weapons there at all, really, and they bring in Antonio Gandy-Golden, who really is just going to be a red zone threat. I don't know how much usage he's going to get. We get excited about Steve Sims. At least I do, Steven Sims, because I know that there's just an opportunity there for a guy to get about 6 to 7, 8 targets a game. So you bring up a really good point in Antonio Gibson. You don't need him to have 130 carries. I have him right now for 130 carries, 40 catches. Maybe that's low. 40 catches over, 16 games and a team that's probably going to be playing from behind quite often. Maybe that's slightly low. So I think where you have him is absolutely fair. Like I said, I would take Melvin Gordon ahead of him. I would probably take
I just readjust. I just after talking with you right now, I just readjusted my rankings. I moved him ahead of David Johnson and Melvin Gordon. Those bums.
Yeah, I mean, what do we really? I mean, I'm fine with him moving him ahead of David Johnson. I mean, David Johnson is at this point, he just seems very fragile, very risky. Like I can't say with confidence that he's even going to play 10 games this season at all. Like he could, if he plays 10, he could lead the team in catches because the entire Houston Texans offense is very fragile. So I have a lot of concerns with all those guys. Yeah, you want to take the younger, spry Antonio Gibson, who can, like you said, move all over the football field. Whether he just gets 5 carries a game, he's probably going to get 5 targets. So I'm fine with that. Mostert, sure. You want to take him over Mostert? There's a very small sample size Raheem Mostert there, and it's just a ludicrous sample size. Like, he was unbelievable in the playoffs. It's still Shanahan backfield that you can't really trust. Yeah, he's going to get more carries, but how many more? He doesn't have a lot of games on his resume where he's flirting with double-digit carries either. So I'm fine with the Antonio Gibson. He kind of reminds me of, maybe you look back at Chris Thompson years ago when he was catching 40, 50 balls out of the backfield. He was a perfectly fine PPR flex. Don't feel great about him being my RB2, but if you can get him at the top of the 5th, after the guys like Akers and Gordon and Taylor come off the board, I'm fine with that.
The only thing that could throw a wrench into this is the Washington footballers go sign like Devonta Freeman today and something like that. Then obviously everything changes. But as it stands right now with Peterson cut and them adding no one else, this is how I do it. If they end up signing someone, if I'm not around to record a video or a podcast, I will just update the rankings. I have the date at the top when the rankings are updated with all of the latest, whatever the last major piece of news is, so you can actually time that out. So for your drafts, if I end up blacking out and passing out, they're not updated. At least you'll know that when it comes down to it, if you're using my cheat sheet to do everything with that. I mentioned one of the names in there, Leonard Fournette, cut from the Jags, now on Tampa. They cut my guy, the goon, Darryl. Although Bruce Arians is saying that, Ronald Jones is still the guy. Not buying that for a fucking second. So should I like any of these guys? I think the answer the problem with Tampa this year is they might be good. I don't think they're going to be great. But they have 3 tight ends. You don't know which one to draft. They have now 4 running backs. So they're going to go with Fournette. They're going to go with Ronald Jones. They still have the rookie, Keyshawn Vaughn. And they still have LaShawn McCoy on this team, who they said is going to get some runs. So you got 4 guys in this backfield. And then you have Evans and Godwin. That's all great. But now they're talking here's Scotty Miller. Here's all these other guys. Draft Chris Godwin and then be done with it.
Yeah, Chris Godwin is my favorite of the bunch, too. I think he could absolutely set records this year with just his route running and how strong of an athlete he really is. I mean, you saw what he was able to do with Jameis Winston just even a couple of years ago when he filled in when Deshaun Jackson was hurt. It was such a small sample size, and Godwin just ate everywhere, all over the field. I just think he's a mismatch. I look at it's just a more beefed up Julian Edelman, and that's kind of how I view Chris Godwin. He's definitely the buck that I want, and Brady, I suppose, but I'm actually in on Fournette. I know it's a crowded backfield right now. I don't believe any of the nonsense that LaShawn McCoy is still going to be heavily involved in this offense. This guy was a scratch in the Super Bowl. They couldn't even have him on the field. Are you kidding me? With just how the relationship that he had with Andy Reid and, just a small sample size, he was okay. But just to have him as a healthy scratch in the Super Bowl, not even on the sidelines, just makes me really concerned about him. They draft Keyshawn Vaughn. They talk up Vaughn throughout the first couple months, and then he's away from the team dealing with some illnesses. And then they talk up Ronald Jones, he looks so good. And then we see clips and videos that he can't catch a pass, like a 5-yard pass, like Brady to him. He can't even catch it. And then they go and they bring in Shady. And then on top of this, they bring in Leonard Fournette. So clearly they don't have any trust in anybody else in that backfield not named Leonard Fournette, right? I mean, he's now coming into this offense on a 1-year deal to prove it. I think he's a good back. The only reason that we were concerned, at least I was concerned about Leonard Fournette, is because of the off-field and on-the-field issues and the fact that he was on a 4.5 projected win total team, the worst in football. And we just laughed all the time that he couldn't get in the red zone. Well, Jacksonville passed the ball a ton in the red zone. They didn't hand it off to a bruiser. I look at Fournette as somebody who's definitely not going to get 70-plus catches. He's not going to touch the ball 250 times, but he's still going to be productive in that offense. Can he pass block for Brady? That's my one concern. Can he really pass block? The offensive line is not brutal. But I look at years past and just, I don't think this offense is going to run like New England and Brady and Belichick a few years ago. But I look at LeGarrette Blount, who the 1 year he caught 7 passes, he had like 70 red zone rushing attempts and 16 touchdowns. I think this is bad news for guys like Gronk, who I was expecting about 30% of his catches to be touchdowns, most of them in the red zone. It's probably bad news for a guy like Mike Evans, slightly inside the red zone. I mean, hand it off to Leonard Fournette. I think Leonard Fournette can get about, at least on average, I'd say 12 carries. That doesn't seem like a lot.
It's not a lot. It's not a lot.
Into,
but like, I loved him in Jacksonville for fantasy
because
purposes.
the volume.
Because it's all volume and dump off. So like he was the guy who I mean with Chris Thompson coming in, maybe that would have taken away a little bit. But like I don't know that he's going to be the pass catching back or a 3-down back here. Like, and that leaves me in this spot. Like I have him ranked at number 63 overall, the spot behind Mostert, ahead of Singletary. But like, would you take Mostert or Fournette? I'd take Mostert.
I would take Fournette. I'm taking the talent. I'm taking the fact that they decided to bring him in, I'm seeing the writing on the wall. They're bringing him in because they have concerns with these other guys. This is what we were talking about Peyton Barber earlier. Like, this is why Peyton Barber was getting those touches, because Ronald Jones was just shit in the bed. He just wasn't any good. So you take away Ronald Jones, you take away Shady McCoy. Keyshawn Vaughn is clearly got some stuff to learn. He hasn't even been with the team that much. I mean, protecting Brady is the big point here. So I actually think that Tampa is going to be a team that runs the football a little bit more than people expect. I don't think Brady's going to drop back all that much. It may be a little disappointing if you're an Evans and a Godwin owner. You're not going to be able to get that same true volume. They were down so often last year in passing the ball. This is a decent run defense that can stop the run, control the clock with Leonard Fournette. So I would take Leonard Fournette over Mostert. I would take him over Devin Singletary because I actually think Zach Moss is going to be the guy there in Buffalo over time. So I'm fine with Leonard Fournette as your RB2. I think he is a top 20 running back. I think he has that upside to be still a low-end RB1. This is a great offense. He's going to find the end zone. We all laughed last year. He just had 3 touchdowns. Listen, he faced stacked boxes 31% of the time. It's not going to happen in Tampa. Absolutely not. There's no way with all of those weapons. I think this is a terrific landing spot for him, a really good offense. And I know touchdowns are hard to predict, but he's going to score more than 3 this year. That's a promise.
Yeah, I think that he's either going to be like a top 10 running back or a guy that you can't play and just kills your lineup every single week. And I think it's more the latter than the former. I am wrong on this stuff all the time, but unless he fell to me, I would not be taking him here.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think he's going to fall. I don't think what's falling this weekend. I don't think he's going to be a 3rd-round pick.
No,
I think he's going to be outside the 4th.
If it gets into like the 5th round, depending on how you construct your team, let's say you go running back, and then in the 5th round, Fournette is sitting there. Do you want to add Fournette as your next guy, or do you want to add like Terry McLaurin?
I would rather add Terry McLaurin. I'm with you. I mean, this is my mindset. Like, Fournette is not a target of mine. I do feel like this is a great landing spot for him, but I typically start my drafts back. And then I just love that value with Terry McLaurin, Chark, Ridley. Like, all of those guys are right in that range. So, you make a really good point. Like, if I had to choose, like, I'm going with the upside wide receiver.
Let's talk about the Jags backfield very briefly. I did a video up on Mayo Media Network with the moment Fournette got cut. I've changed my tune since then, since Rykel Armstead doesn't practice, apparently. He was activated from the COVID list, but no, don't worry about that. He's still not practicing. So, Chris Thompson, I now have the highest ranked of the Jags running backs. Again, it's kind of the similar situation as we talked about, where Antonio Gibson could be on the field with both them trailing or them up and potentially handing carries. We know that Thompson's not going to be that. So I have him right around, where do I actually have him? Number 1 spot ahead of Chase Edmonds at number 97 in the overall rankings. He's going to have catches. He's going to have 2 or 3 carries probably on average a game, maybe up to 5 depending on this backfield. I think he'll be a decent flex play. He's a nice injury fill-in player, bye-week player. He's not someone you want to go target. So that leaves us with Ozigbo and James Robinson, who Doug Marrone did say both of these guys could play all 3 downs. That's what we've seen under Doug Marrone in this offense. The running back plays all 3 downs, a lot like the Steelers over the years, where it's like, oh, this guy's going to come in and take Le'Veon Bell's job. Like, oh, they drafted James Conner. That means Bell's not going to get all the work. No, Bell got all the work. And then when Conner became the guy, Conner got all the work. And then even when we had like Jalen Samuels, like, oh, Jalen Samuels is playing 99% of the snaps. Great. Oh, he got hurt. Benny Snell's in. He's going to play all of the snaps. Like, they so rarely ever do a split in Jacksonville that it could be worth gambling on Ozigbo or James Robinson. I would go Ozigbo in this circumstance. I have him at number 101, one spot behind Zach Moss and one spot ahead of Matt Breida.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Ozigbo is the guy that I like more than Armstead. Yeah, you're right. Armstead, I mean, he was dealing with COVID. He was away from the team, and then he comes back, and then he's still away with an illness that's not expected to be COVID. So he's been away from this team now all camp. So I think Ozigbo has the upper hand here. He's an athletic running back, and he's a big boy. I mean, 6'2", 225 pounds. He could be the goal line back there potentially. He can catch balls out of the backfield. I think he was a star a couple years ago in training camp with the Saints camp, and obviously they just didn't have any room for him. So I think this is a decent opportunity. That's probably part of the reason why they just decided to move on from Leonard Fournette. I mean, Armstead it's just been such a small sample size. I remember the last game of the year, he finally got some usage. I believe he had double-digit carries, and he caught 5 passes out of the backfield, so he can catch. But I just don't want to spend – like, I find in my drafts recently over the past couple of days, I've done some drafts. I find, Armstead's going around that 7th, 8th round. I just don't feel comfortable taking him. I'd rather wait a couple rounds later or even 4 rounds later. And you bring up a good point with Chris Thompson, back with Gruden. And, what he did in Washington, again, much like we're talking about Antonio Gibson, I kind of compare the two. Gibson, I expect to have more usage on the ground between the tackles, more rushing attempts. But
I think the thing
Chris Thompson's going to catch 40 balls.
Yeah, he might actually catch more than that in his offense. But you have to. It's almost like the Bills' backfield in a certain way, and even the Chargers' backfield now is that you have quarterbacks that instead of dumping the ball off like Rivers would to Eckler and Melvin Gordon and just pile up their receptions for those valuable PPR points, Tyrod's going to run. Minshew's going to run. Josh Allen's going to run. And that just takes away from the overall bottom line. I would project Thompson for more than that the only reason I bring up the name, you're not drafting James Robinson. You're just not. But I only throw out the name is that if somehow he wins the job and they're saying he could be a 3-down guy, one of these guys could luck into a really good role if they don't use Thompson, where they're basically Fournette light. They're 80% what Fournette would have been. And that would be worth gambling in the 9th round or 10th round, or even beyond that if Ozigbo ends up sitting there in like the 12th or 13th. Like, why not? Take the shot to see if he's the guy. If he's not the guy, fucking cut him. Like, it's not super difficult to figure out. What you should be doing at the back end of your fantasy football drafts is I don't want to say like sleepers, but just start taking guys that you project be like, oh, could they have like a really high upside role? Are the chances of that low? Yes, that's why they're going in the 14th and 15th round. But at the same time, that if one thing breaks their way, are they now like a must-start guy every week? And he feels like one of those guys to me, that if things break his way and all of a sudden he is named the starter week 1 and he's playing 3 downs like he's a top 15 running back.
Yeah, he is. Absolutely. You bring up a good point. Yeah, you're at that point of the draft, you're really just looking for upside and a guy who could potentially fall into, 3-down work. And and people will just look at Jacksonville and they'll say, nah, I mean, I just don't want any part of that, but it's volume, right? I mean, that's why I said earlier that I didn't mind AP, because I just knew depending on how deep your draft is, if somebody's going to touch the ball 10, 15 times, I mean, there's value in that, especially if you're going to get that running back outside of the top 10 rounds. I mean, you mentioned Chase Edmonds. I like Chase Edmonds because he's a guy that I feel like I've already seen him when nobody else, when DJ and Drake wasn't there. I saw him. Yeah, it was against the Giants, but I saw him touch the ball around 20 times in that offense. It's exciting. So out of all of those guys, I'd probably take Chase Edmonds because of that and that offense. But yeah, these guys are great values, Pat, and they're towards the back part of your draft. And if you happen for whatever reason to go wide receiver, and you just want some running back depth at the end, that could work out. It can. So Chris Thompson is actually the cheapest. And in a full point setting, he's the guy that I think that I maybe like a little bit more. But again, he won't get that goal line work, but this is not a good football team anyways. They're going to be passing a lot. I expect Minshew to be in the top 5 in passing attempts this year.
Yeah, and he's going to be running as well. Like, if you want to reach on it, if you want to reach on a Jag, reach on Chark. That's That's it. He is
for
the
sure.
Jag to own. Other than that, like I like Minshew. You could probably start Minshew starting week 1. He's just going to be all garbage time and rushing yards. A lot like what we saw from Josh Allen 2 years ago. Just the way that he was able to compile fantasy points just in like 2 big runs. All of a sudden, that's like a run for 50 yards, a run for 30 yards, just on broken plays because they're down by 30 points or something like that. That's the equivalent of 2 passing touchdowns. So Minshew is going to pile up points that way. I think he's going to be a top 10 fantasy QB this year. And then Shenault at the back, like they could use him out of the backfield too. He was a Wildcat quarterback in college. He seems to have a huge athletic profile. I just want to go back to Antonio Gibson very briefly for 1 sec. The biggest difference between him and some of these other guys, like dude is 6'2", 220. Like he's not small.
Yeah.
Like people in their mind because he's like a, you know, he's like Zoolander. Or Fabio. He's an actor / model, and not the other way around. When you see like the wide receiver / running back, you think scat back, but he's not at all. And Chenault's kind of the same way too that you could use in this backfield. So just don't reach on any of these guys besides Chark. Let them fall to you. If they fall to you, you can take them. It's that easy. Let's go rapid fire now through the rest of these news items. Kamara might have a contract problem. He also got an epidural in his back. That sounds terrifying.
Yeah, I'm scared of Kamara even before hearing that recent news in the contract. I don't know. Like he's such a good running back, but you know, last year I just didn't love the usage. I thought there were some weird games with him where he wasn't getting the carries that I thought he would get. And, you know, that was the first year without Mark Ingram. And, you know, it was just a weird split between him and Latavius Murray. And obviously Drew Brees left a little bit. I don't think I'm going to touch Alvin Kamara. You know, you got the contract, you got the knee, you got the back now. You got to spend probably, you know, the 4th, 5th pick. I just don't like it. I'm just not really feeling it. Over the past, you know, couple weeks, it's him and Dalvin Cook. I really just don't know what to do with. And I just find myself, if I'm in that 4, that 5 spot, if Michael Thomas falls to me, I just get Michael Thomas and then I just move on. So yeah, Kamara, I don't know. Is he like this seems like a red flag, a major red flag.
Yeah, I think now he has 2 major red flags. I had him at 4 overall. I dropped him. Like if I have the 4th pick, I'm not taking him there. Not to say that he can't be the best player. He could be very well. Everything could just work out fine. But like, I don't want red flag guy at number 4. I really don't. Michael Thomas is a much better option at number 4,
right? Just
for safety purposes. That's where I have him ranked. So now I go McCaffrey, Barkley, Elliott, 1, 2, 3, Thomas and Devontae Adams. 4 and 5. I think Adams is gonna be fucking incredible this season.
Me too.
Honest to God, the best pick if you don't get number 1, 2, or 3, I would want pick 12 in a 12-team league because you're probably going to get Adams there, and then you can follow it up with a stud running back, and you are off to the races. That is an awesome pick to have. But like I put Henry ahead of Kamara. The Eagles just cut 3 running backs. Like Sanders is going to be fine. Like I would almost consider drafting Sanders and Mixon over Kamara right now. I have Henry over him officially in the rankings at number 6, Kamara at 7 because I have Dalvin Cook at 8, but he's also kind of dealing with this stupid contract stuff too.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. I picked at 9 in FTN draft on Tuesday, and I took Devontae Adams, and I was able to have the option of a Mixon or a Sanders or a Drake. Actually, it seems like people were a little bit scared of all 3, and now Mixon has this contract, and as you mentioned, the Eagles cut some back, so it looks like Miles Sanders is fine. That's all we ever wanted. You know, in years past when there's preseason, you don't want that star running back to get all those reps. It just seems like Philly was like, okay, listen, instead of preseason, we're not going to have any preseason games. Just take a seat for a little bit. You're nicked up and we'll have you fresh for week 1. Yeah, I agree with you, Pat, 100%. I'd rather take the Wido Tech. I'd rather take Julio Jones maybe at this point. I think Derrick Henry, just a lot of people just crap on him. Henry is safe, solid. You know what the Titans want to do. He's going to touch the ball probably more than anyone in football besides Christian McCaffrey and maybe Saquon, and that's what the guy is probably going to catch 20 passes.
Well, there's an interesting Derrick Henry note here, too, and one of the reasons that I bumped him up. It appears like the Titans are only going to carry 2 running backs on their roster once they trim down the 53-man roster on Saturday. So, in my mind, it just kind of like, bloop, right in my head, like, we need to get on Darrynton Evans, the backup to Derrick Henry, because I always talk about, like, you need to draft Latavius Murray. If anything ever happens to Alvin Kamara, like, Murray's a top 5 running back. Evans could just be the last man standing in this offense. Is he as good as Henry? God, no. But could he be 60% of Henry in the last round or undrafted? Yes, he very much could. I don't expect, and you never have to use him if Henry's playing, but if Henry gets hurt, which he does from time to time, if he is the only man around, you got to have him.
Got to have him. Yeah, I have a lot of shares of him, actually. He's absolutely free. He's been one of my picks in the last couple of rounds. Like, obviously, the last couple you play with defense and kickers, whatever. But Evans, right before that, because to your point, yeah, they don't have any other running backs. And he's looked pretty good in camp. There's just been some positive reviews, him catching balls out of the backfield, looking strong on the ground. He's getting a little bit more run, obviously, with they know what they have with Derrick Henry. There's no really need to give him all these, touches in practice and whatnot. So, absolutely. And, again, we know what the Titans want to do. They want to run the football and go with the play action pass. So Evans is one of those backs like Chase Edmonds, who's even going after him, that can fall into, I don't want to say RB1, but certainly top 15, Pat. Top 15 would be a lock if there was no Derrick Henry there.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations, like one of the reasons that I love Latavius is because you never are at risk of starting him if he doesn't have the job. He's a bench guy, and he's not someone you plug into your line. That's my one hesitation with Chase Edmonds, is that people get fired up because he has these big games, even with Drake out there, or even with David Johnson out there, but they're completely unpredictable. And generally, when you start him, he has 0 points, unless he's the man. So you don't ever want that temptation. You're kind of, it's like... I could just dummy a bag of Doritos at any time, regardless of the size of the bag of Doritos. So my wife, she comes home and she has like the giant, like sweet chili heat, vegan, by the way. Not that I'm a vegan, but I just found that if you have vegan friends, you serve the sweet chili heat Daggos and you're on your way. But if she brings home that thing and I have like a glass of wine or a beer, I'm dummying that entire fucking bag. And if I had Chase Edmonds on my team, I would think to myself, I can't help but not try to get too cute with my lineups and too tricky with my lineups, that I just tell my wife, don't buy these fucking chips. Just, if you're not going to eat them, I don't need them around. I'm not going to think about them if they're not in the house, so don't buy them. If I don't have Chase Edmonds on my team versus someone like Latavius Murray or someone like Evans, guys that I know that I'm never going to use unless the opportunity is perfect and the starter is hurt, I don't want to have the guy. It's the same as Madison. Like, Madison will have like 9 carries in a game for like 59 yards and a touchdown because, the Vikings got up by a bunch and he came in and they sat down Dalvin Cook. It's like, oh, they're 14-point favorites against this shitty team. And then it doesn't work out that way and you start some guy who has 1 point in your lineup. Like, I just don't want that. I need to protect myself from myself and my stupid decisions that I like to make. If you don't have that problem, don't worry about it. But for me, that's kind of the angle that I have to take.
I tell you what, I have the problem of eating a full bag of Doritos at any point, at any time. I have no problem crushing Doritos. But yeah, you bring up a good point because and also just to wrap this up, is that Edmonds and like Tony Pollard and Madison, these guys are like
I would say
round picks.
Yeah, I would say like Pollard is a different circumstance. Pollard is in the Murray situation because you're never going to start Tony Pollard unless Zeke's hurt. That's a good one. But some people are like, man, Madison could be a flex player. It's like, no, he's not a flex player. Do not do that. Like, Chris Thompson is a flex player. Alexander Madison is not. He's either your running back one or a guy who sits on your fucking bench.
Yeah. Agree. And it just, I see a lot of people in my drafts, they take Cook and then they pair him up with Madison. I just like, oh, it's such a waste. Like, it's just not the right strategy to take.
Yeah. Take other people's handcuffs. That makes your team better. If anything happens to their guy, like someone else drafts Kamara, you take Latavius. Like, you don't want to like, all you're doing is making your team like, listen, if your stud running back goes down, that's not good. It means no matter who you replace him with, that's not going to be good. However, if someone else has Dalvin Cook and you have Alexander Madison, or you have Evans and someone else has Derrick Henry gets hurt, you lost nothing on your team and you just gained a running back too. And they're shit out of luck about it. So that's always the better strategy to take. You're trying to maximize the upside of your team in these situations. That's how the handcuffs work. Here's one for you. The Athletic. Now, I don't know if we can trust The Athletic after that Adrian Peterson report, but Nate Taylor suggests he would not be surprised if Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Darrell Williams split most of the Chiefs' rushing attempts on opening night. I can see that with a rookie coming in. I'm still drafting Helaire 15th overall. You can take him at the turn if you want to. I'm not scared about that. But Williams becomes the must-have guy behind him, and ESPN projects DeAndre Washington not making the Chiefs roster. So initially, I had loved DeAndre Washington as one of these super high upside handcuffs. Turns out he's not going to be on the team, apparently. So just draft Williams. And Williams becomes one of, besides Murray and Madison, Pollard, maybe even Dion Lewis with the Giants. We'll see about that. Gio Bernard, Evans, Darrell Williams is now firmly in that mix as guy who becomes an instant starter if anything happens to Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, this is another example of just grabbing somebody towards the end of your draft that could be a home run for you. Yeah, DeAndre Washington, I wasn't really believing in him anyways. It was just it's all about protecting Patrick Mahomes, right? This offensive line is not great. I believe Only 4 teams ran fewer than KC last year. Even when they score points, they still can't help themselves to throw the football with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And I get it, like whatever, just score as many points as you can. But it's all about pass blocking, and Williams is doing that. And obviously Damian is not around. So this is a guy that actually isn't getting drafted at all, Pat. I see the other guys like the Gio Bernards and Evans of the world and Boston Scott, like people are more willing to grab those guys. But for here, it's just somebody that can get in, knows the playbook, is familiar with the team, has had some reps last year. So I'm not totally shocked at all to hear the Athletics say that it could be a split backfield in week 1. Over time, it's not going to be a split backfield. It's going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire as long as he can protect Patrick Mahomes. And I have no problem with Clyde Edwards-Helaire either. I mean, he only needs like Austin Eckler usage or Alvin Kamara usage a couple years ago is touch the ball 12 to 15 times in that offense, and you're going to be a low-end RB1. There's no question about it. So, yeah, another free pick. A great topic because, again, nobody is drafting him. And I'll tell you what, if he's on the waiver wire and something happens to Clyde Edwards-Helaire or he's not protecting Patrick Mahomes, you're going to be wasting all your fab on somebody who, in that KC backfield. So just do it with your last pick.
The Bills, the report is that the running backs, Singletary is suffering from fumbling problems, apparently. If you're hearing that report, that's not good news. But at the same time, they're going to dictate, and they did this last year too, depending on the defense, which is super sharp from Sean McDermott. Don't get me wrong. Bad for fantasy, though, because you're never going to know if it's going to be Moss, if it's going to be Singletary, getting the majority of the touches and snaps that week. And then you always have the fear that Josh Allen just sneaks the ball in from the 1-yard line and steals the touchdowns. If your guys aren't guaranteed to get a huge volume of touches, you'd at least want them handling the goal line work to make up for it, but we don't even know if that's going to be on the table. One handoff, he gets tackled, all of a sudden Josh Allen is calling his own number. I think Moss is the better. I have Singletary ranked higher, but just based on ADP, I think Moss is probably the better pick because he's just cheaper, and it could be him. I think Singletary is probably better. I loved what I saw out of him out of the backfield, catching the ball and hitting the outside and getting off tackle. But if this becomes a situation where they're up in games and the Bills defense looks pretty good and they need someone to protect the ball, it just might be Moss up the middle for 4 yards in a cloud of dust and hopefully move the chains. Like, that's not fantasy appealing to anyone at that point.
No, I like Moss. I'm kind of torn on this backfield slightly because I see some of the things that you mentioned, with catching to the backfield with Singletary and in the open space. I liked a lot of what I saw from him last year, but I just think Moss is more what they need, right? I mean, they tried this with Frank Gore. Believe it or not, he actually had the most red zone rushing attempts, but he just couldn't get in, right? I mean, he gets stopped at the one all the time. And then as you pointed out, Josh Allen calls his own number. Zach Moss is really moving up charts. I mean, August 4th, looking at Fantasy Football Calculator right now, he was a 10th round pick, and now he's a 7th round pick. And I took him in the 6th at FTN. I have him ranked ahead of Devin Singletary. I think the fumbles are a big time concern. It's not just right now. He fumbled the football a lot last year too, and they never gave him any usage inside the red zone. I believe he had 3 rushing attempts inside the 10. So he's not going to be the guy there. And I think they actually want Zach Moss to be the guy. Now, it's funny to say that. You can want whatever, but at the same time, Josh Allen is probably still going to call his own number. But again, like, you just have a back who can grind and get you that extra yardage. He is a bruiser. He is actually pretty decent in the open field. And I think that he can catch balls. I don't think that he's just going to be limited to first down, second down role. I don't think they're just going to push away Singletary altogether. It's a nice change of pace back, but I have a lot of appeal in Zach Moss. And I like what Buffalo has done over the past couple of years. I still think they're going to be a run-heavy team. I think that they're going to rely on their defense, which I think is top-notch, probably top 5 in all of football. And they brought in a lot of guys, as you know, and people listening and watching right now who are great route runners, great hands, and just get the ball in open space with these guys, and they can make things happen. But yeah, that's what's so appealing, is that Singletary seems to be going in the 5th round and Zach Moss is going after him. And he's definitely going to be the goal line back. I think he's going to have more touches than Devin Singletary. Singletary is falling down draft boards for me. If he falls down in the 6th, 7th, 8th round, absolutely a steal. You definitely can't let him fall that much. But if I'm picking between the two, Pat, it's Zach Moss for me.
All right, let's go. Actual rapid fire here. Josh Gordon to Seahawks. You care? I don't.
Nope, don't care at all.
Amari Cooper has either been limited or a non-participant for the team's last 4 practices. Does this worry you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want any shares of Amari Cooper at all anyways. And no, he's not even the red zone guy there, right? They brought in Lamb. He's going to lead in red zone touches.
You think so? Would you rather draft Lamb or Gallup?
Yeah, I would rather. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I
No,
gotta
no,
take
no,
Amari
between-
Cooper is like wide receiver 11 to 15. No chance.
Yeah, I have Cooper in the rankings behind AJ Brown and Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen shaping up to be like a good pick.
Oh,
this year.
I'd rather have Keenan Allen 100%. He's going to have way more targets.
Yeah, and I like DK Metcalf and T.Y. Hilton and Odell and Juju and all those guys better. But between Gallup and Lamb, pick one.
I'll go with Lamb.
I'll go with Gallup on that one. Cam Newton is officially the quarterback for the New England Patriots, so no surprise there. I like Cam as a fantasy upside play. I think everyone does. I think Minshew might actually still be better than Cam in this spot. But Mike Reese is reporting that Damian Harris, he got all the love. I drafted him late, and I was like, I felt so good. I got the starting running back. And of course, he could miss the team's season opener against the Dolphins with his hand injury. He could miss a few weeks. That now leaves the newly activated Lamar Miller. We got Sex Rex Burkhead. James White's the only one of these guys that you can even feasibly think about playing the first few weeks. I still like Harris, or like, do you really want to play Sony Michel? No. I would still take Harris late. I still think he's going to end up being the guy, but you're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, James White is the only one that I want. And then Harris, I suppose I'll take a shot at him. I do have a flyer. He was going pretty late, upside guy. He was great in college. But yeah, that's the only one. I have no interest in Rex Burkhead, Sony Michel, or Lamar Miller. We're going down this road again with New England. They're going to frustrate everybody.
Just don't do it. Just don't do that.
There's no need.
Yeah. Take someone else.
Cam, White, and Edelman. And even I don't really care about Cam all that much, to be honest. I'd rather Minshew.
I think Cam could be really good here. San Francisco update, Tavon. They have signed like 8,000 receivers in this offseason. They've all went to the injured reserve.
Nobody.
Tavon Austin's now on the injured reserve, but it looks like Debo could be practicing as of next week with his foot injury. He continues to fall down boards. I still really like Debo. If he can fall to you, he could be a wide receiver 2 in this offense. He is the number 2 option behind Kittle. He could even develop into the number 1. I hate Ayuk. Don't draft him. Sucks. And then Richie James is actually coming back as well. And like, you get the Trent Taylor news. Like, I wouldn't try to invest too much into the San Francisco offense, except for the clearly defined guys. And the only 2 that I can really figure out are Kittle. He's great. And Debo, when he's back, is going to be the man. Like, I like Kendrick Bourne for like week 1 DraftKings, but if he ended up with 0 points, it wouldn't shock me, kind of thing. Like, Debo and Kittle are the only 2 options that you really want. So I just want to hit on that. Eckler, Justin Jackson, and Joshua Kelly, it is reported, could all see rushing attempts and targets in the Chargers' offensive attack this year. I am not high on Eckler. I think he's the best of them. I see where his fantasy upside lies, but there could be a lot of downside in this offense if they actually do either do a split or do a 3-man with Tyrod at quarterback. Like, it's going to be tough for him to hit his like ceiling.
Yeah, he's definitely going to regress. He's not going to be able to put up the same type of numbers that he did last year. And you got to remember that Melvin Gordon wasn't with the team over the first few weeks too. So he's really getting a ton of usage. I like Joshua Kelly. I have no interest in Justin Jackson. Kelly's another guy that's pretty free. And I think that he could be a 3rd down back. He's obviously not going to be one this year if Eckler's healthy, but he can catch. And I just see a little bit more upside. Justin Jackson already had his opportunity and he didn't do anything with it.
All right. The Colts, Trey Burton. Yes, he is on the Colts now. Is going to miss at least the first 2 weeks of the regular season with a calf injury. Jack Doyle for our League of Leagues team. That's fantastic. Probably not, but at least it's Rivers. It's a tight end. He's going to be playing all the snaps. Expect some like solid like 7 for 68 type games. So if you play in a PPR league, you can do that. You play on DraftKings. Maybe he's cheap enough to do week 1. But the Colts wide receiver Paris Campbell, the Frenchman, was activated from the league's concussion protocol. If there was another receiver to own there besides Ty, which guy would you go with? Would it be Campbell, Pittman, Pascal? Anyone?
Man, yeah. I'll pick one just because you asked, but I don't have any interest either. I'll go with Campbell. Just because, again, he probably knows the system a little bit more, even though he wasn't really on the field a lot more. What Frank Reich wants to do is use all of his tight ends and run the football and slow the pace down. They just want Phillip Rivers not to turn the ball over. That's it. They're going to play at a very slow pace and just run the football there in Indy.
Jets news. This is always fun. Mims is back practicing, and Adam Gase said his late August issues with Le'Veon Bell were nothing but a miscommunication. And they're probably going to sign Adrian Peterson, put Bell on the bench, and run a tandem of Frank Gore and Adrian Peterson for whatever reason, just because they're super Andrikers. I actually don't hate Bell this year, by the way. I think that he continues to slip. Like, you get him in the 5th round sometimes. At that point, he's still a guy that could see all the volume. Like, why not? It might be a waste of a 5th round pick, but if I was going like 0 RB, like I like him better than David Johnson and that type of guy. I like someone like James Conner and Chris Carson a lot better, but Bell is sort of going way after those guys now because of all the negative news around him. I don't hate that. Chargers OC said that Mike Williams and his like sprained AC joint in his shoulder is going to be like ready to play week 1. I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, I don't believe that either. No, early reports was that he was like week to week. He's going to miss a lot of time. This is why I like Keenan Allen a lot. I don't see him jumping up boards as much as he should, really. He's going to be a guy that's going to get a lot of targets and easy completion for Tyrod. Put him in the slot, move him around. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not in on Mike Williams, although in the past, like what we've seen from Tyrod to, when he aired it up to Sammy Watkins, I mean, I think he's a little bit underrated that way, but I'm not typically drafting these guys that are already hurt, these wideouts. I don't see a big enough discount for Mike Williams.
Next one, Russell Gage. In the Gage with Russell Gage. Is being reported that he's made tremendous strides and is ready to make Gage a big impact in the slot. But like, where does he fall on the Atlanta pecking order? 6th?
Yep. 5th at best, probably. You're right. It's a late round flyer. Yeah, he's not somebody that you can get excited. When I say that I like him, I play in some deeper leagues where I take a shot on him. But yeah, it's Julio, it's Ridley, it's Hurst, it's Gurley.
I think this hurts Hurst more than anyone.
Yeah, I would agree. Because Julio and Calvin are going to get theirs 100%. And Gurley's probably going to, I would say Gurley gets about 5 targets a game.
Yeah.
So what's that? Matt Ryan's like, yeah, he's always been in the top 5 in passing attempts. But right there, when you factor in those 3 and then Hurst, that's a big chunk of his passing attempts right there. So really, Gage is probably a 3 or 4 target guy until someone gets hurt.
Yeah, so the last news item, and this is a guy I had underranked, and I don't really know why. Some guys, when you have to have a take on everyone, sometimes things just kind of go over your head, slip your mind. But throwback to mid-90s Canadian viewers who know all about Jonnu Vision, that Jonnu Smith is like the number 2 in Tennessee in terms of the passing game. I moved him up in my tight end rankings. I have him number 119 overall. That's ahead of Austin Hooper, Noah Fant, Gesicki, Hawkinson, Hayden Hurst, Jack Doyle, Jared Cook, all those guys. I just think he has an incredible opportunity here. And just for whatever reason, I don't know why I wasn't high on him, but I really should be.
Yeah, you should be. The tight end position is appealing this year. I mean, I don't know. Am I the only one to think that? I mean, you obviously have the big 3 up at the top with Andrews, and then Philly, everybody seems to be hurt. So Zach Ertz is actually a pretty good value too. And then I kind of avoid that middle tier, with the Gronk and the Waller and Ingram and Henry. I kind of avoid that. And then you have some of these upside guys in Fant, Hawkinson, Gesicki, but Jonnu Smith is the one that actually is going after them. So you can wait even longer at the tight end position. He's clearly the number 2. We could stop talking about Corey Davis. He's not the number 2 in that offense. It's Jonnu Smith. And he's very, very athletic, Pat. I mean, he's had a lot of solid runs. Get the ball again, what they want to do, run and play action. It's 2 targets there in Tennessee, and he's one of them.
All right. So I wrote down 5 tips. If you are just coming in to fantasy football this weekend, you've done really no research, or you just have like a list of, I would say a magazine, but you're probably beyond a magazine because you're watching this or listening to this right now. At the same time, I wrote down a list of things that you should probably pay attention to going into your fantasy football draft this weekend if you've done no research whatsoever. So I'm going to run these by you. You tell me if you agree or disagree, okay?
Yep.
Draft stud running backs early. The guys that get all the carries. Between the 20s, passing game, goal line. There's like 8 of these guys. Try to get one of them. Don't reach on middling quarterback or running back, sorry.
Agree.
Agree.
100%. I think, that's the number 1 point. You want a 3 down back.
Yeah, and like in these middle rounds, if the guy isn't all these things, don't go out of your way to go reach for him. Just wait for some of the other guys to fall back to you and take some of these handcuffs. Number 2, wait on tight end unless it's Kittle or Kelsey.
Yes. I actually have Kittle number 1 tight end because of all the San Fran injuries.
Wrong.
They're side by side, man. Like I splitting hairs with both of them. I know you're a big Kelsey guy, but yeah, grab those 2 or just wait it out. Yeah.
Let QBs fall to you and only take running quarterbacks.
Yes. I like that last point because you see Brady and Stafford, they're just always staring at you in the middle rounds, but they don't have that same rushing upside. Like they're not going to run the football, and that provides a nice, safe floor.
Yeah. I mean, everyone laughed at me when I was drafting Josh Allen as a top 10 quarterback last year in the last round. And what was he, the 6th best quarterback? So you have Minshew, Daniel Jones, these guys both like Kyler's going way ahead of that, but Burrow could end up running. Like, just take a running quarterback, save yourself the time. Tyrod too. Like These guys are all going in like the very last round. You don't need to reach for them. Middle wide receivers are where it's at. So you go like running back, elite tight end, running back. Then you have McLaurin, Woods, Chark, and these guys in rounds like 4, 5, 6, like that sort of spot. You can pile up an awesome receiving core without reaching for any of the top end guys like the Evans or the Godwins. Like I think these guys are either ahead of them or a whole lot closer than you might think.
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. I love that range in the 4th round. Robert Woods, DK Metcalf, Chark, Lockett, McLaurin, Keenan Allen. Those are all stud wide receivers that I would be perfectly fine if they were my wide receiver too.
And handcuffs are important, especially with COVID going around. We don't know how that's going to affect anything. I've increased the bench spot in my league by 1. In my home keeper league that we're just drafting an extra round this year, it'll go back to normal next year. But instead of putting in an IR spot, just add an extra bench spot. But take someone else's handcuff. If someone else has Derrick Henry, you take Evans. Someone else has Zeke, you take Pollard. Do not handcuff your own guy in this situation. You want to have maximum upside for your team. We've kind of been over this, but that's what I'm going with.
Yeah. I think, it was different in years past, Pat. People were always talking about handcuffs. You want to protect a Zeke or protect your investment with a Pollard or an Edmonds with a Drake. I don't think it works that way. I think, you want to grab somebody else's handcuff and you can just maximize your full potential that way.
All right. That will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Remember to smash the like, and what you need to do is tell me the guy that you want to have you have to get in your draft. Also, don't be afraid to reach for a player you like. It's fucking fantasy football. It's supposed to be fun. Just go take the guys that you want when it all comes down to it. I know you want to win, but if there's a guy that you have a feeling about, go take him. Like, don't let anyone like laugh you off. You're like, oh, I can't believe you reached around on this guy. Like, who cares? When it comes down to it.
People are all over me for taking Zach Moss. It's a 14-team league. If I don't take Zach Moss, by the time it comes back, I don't have Zach Moss. And I wanted Zach Moss. So yeah, don't be afraid to reach for a guy. You don't have to do it in the first 2 rounds. But the value will fall to you. You can reach to some after the 3rd round. You want a guy, go get him.
I played in one of these quote unquote experts league last year, and I had the 12th pick or 14. I can't remember if it was 12 or 14 teams, but I had the last pick of the first round. And everyone was taking running backs, and I got laughed out of the room by taking Michael Thomas and Travis Kelce with my first 2 picks. Like, oh, I can't believe you took these guys here. It's like, well, if I don't take them here, I'm not getting them, for one thing.
Are you kidding?
And then I ended up with the best receiver and the best tight end. And guess who my next 2 picks were at the turn? Carson and Josh Jacobs. Also got laughed at for taking those guys too early. Like, no one knows fucking anything, so just do what you want when it comes down to it.
Yeah, the disrespect again on Chris Carson. I mean, this guy is absolutely safe.
Yeah.
It just, again, block out the outside noise, take as much as what you want, listen to this show, have a set of rankings with you for sure. Whether it's Pat's, anyone's, just have some rankings there for you, just so you have an idea of where the ADP and all that stuff. But don't be afraid to reach on a guy. And if you want him, just block out that outside noise. I mean, again, I hear, as we're wrapping up, I hear people talk about Chris Carson all the time. Chris Carson, the injuries, Carson. He is just safe. Seattle runs the football. He's a solid running back. Another guy who I just feel like is getting disrespected.
Absolutely. I like Chris Carson again this year, more so than someone I think he's right around Josh Jacobs again, who I don't love Josh Jacobs this year. I think he's just very close to where he was last year, which would make him like a 3rd round pick, not a 2nd round pick. But at the same time, remember to smash the like button, rate and review the Pat Mayo Experience. 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Chris Meany on Twitter at Chris Meany, and check out all of his work at FTN Fantasy, FTN Bets, and FTNDaily.com. If you use code MAYO at any of those places, you get a discount. I'm not sure what the discount is right now, but I know it does have a discount. It tells you that, hey, Pat Mayo sent you. At FTN Daily, FTN Bets, and FTNFantasy.com, depending on what you're looking for. The tools up there are fucking amazing, and I suggest you go check them out right now. I'll be back Saturday with a full breakdown of DraftKings strategy for the year. AFC, NFC win total shows already out. I'll have a how to gamble on football show coming out. Then week 1 rankings, week 1 spread picks. It's all happening. Football's here, all right? Thank you all for watching. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!